Welcome to What the Fuck Did I Just Read? The Tech Sales and Marketing Edition. This is going to be a blast.
This isn't just a podcast to have a conversation. This is a podcast to affect change.
It's kind of our outlet for therapy, to just let it rip. All right, I officially got chills because it's been, a month since I've seen that kick-ass trailer.
It's been a while, hasn't it? It's been a while. I think you're right. Probably a month or so. Yeah, it's been a long month.
Oh, well, I am thrilled to be back. We are back
Weekly. Not
weekly
just
now.
back, but we're back weekly. Yeah, I think life has gotten so crazy, and therapy is expensive. Therefore, this is a much more efficient alternative, I think, at this point in time.
Oh, well, it's good to be back, Chris. Missed you. We did see each other a month ago. Wow, has it already been a month since RSA?
Yeah.
24th? It's been a month. Holy crap.
It's been a month. It's been about a month or so. I think so. Yeah, because it was. Yeah, it has been a month because it was. What are we in now? It's April, May.
May.
We're in May,
Into
aren't we?
May. Yeah, we're into May.
Yeah.
Well, we are back, folks. Welcome to the show. Let's see. Okay, let's see how many people we have with 7 on, but I got to refresh. Let's refresh. 7 on. We had 80 who registered. Oh, 25. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Welcome back to
Welcome
those
back, everybody.
who are regular listeners. We missed you all. To those who are new to the show, welcome. How this works as a refresher, Chris and I come on, we vent for 5 minutes, and then we go fishing in his spam inbox for wonderful little nuggets of joy called spam emails. We break that down, and then the most important part, we build it back up so that sales, marketing, what's above, below, in between gets efficient advice as to how to do things for the security buyer in terms of outreach. So with that, how are you, Chris?
Life is interesting. I'm trying to dodge curveballs, but failing rather splendidly and spectacularly at this precise moment in time. I think it's probably the best way to put it. Thankfully, Milo's floating around. I think he's actually upstairs at the moment. I'm no cool watch on the wrist. Actually, not a bad one on the wrist. I have the G-Shock
Okay.
MRG.
Speaking of watches,
Yeah.
remind me to hit you up afterwards about some watches that I put on the side because my birthday is next week and I am definitely spoiling myself with a watch.
Do I not have yours on the calendar? I have no clue.
It's always my birthday. No, but next week is watch shopping time, so I got to get some advice. I'm in between a Rado or an Oris. I like Oris a lot. Anyway.
Ooh, I'll help you on that one.
Yes.
Yeah, I will have that conversation. Definitely offline. Actually, not bad offline. Oris are nice. Don't get me wrong. I love them. Movements are pretty good now. Watch is good. Depreciation is pretty nasty. So let's work on that one. Rado, the Ceramica Rados are actually really nice. They do such a nice job on that one. I've had a couple of their D stars, and I've given a couple out as friends, presents to friends and stuff like that. So they're nice ones. I have a couple of Orises left. I got rid of a bunch of mine, but
I remember that was a sad day.
I'm actually having those conversations at the moment just for some human circumstances, getting rid of a bunch more of the collection, freeing up some cash, and we'll be changing circumstances and situations soon. So it's life.
Speaking of changing circumstances, Danny Wolf is no longer in Tel Aviv, folks. We are on the same side of the world, Chris, which is fabulous.
I would say a stone's throw away, but that's a hell of a big stone to lob, but still close enough. At least you're in the next time zone, if nothing
exactly.
else. Not 9 time zones different.
Yeah, that was quite the challenge of scheduling. All right. Your night, my morning, middle of the night. It was just, now it's just like, an hour ahead?
Yeah, it's not too bad. Yes, it's still early in the morning, or earlier in the morning for you. But
it's not an ungodly hour, so that's what's most important. Voice was cracking about an hour and a half ago. I was telling Chris I sound like a teenager in puberty.
I was not awake an hour and a half ago. Let's just put it that way. I think I finally finished about 2 something this morning.
Brutal. All right. Speaking of brutal, shall we start digging?
I'm actually going to start with and this one's I'm actually going to hit LinkedIn up because, and let me close. I've got us open for some. How the hell do I close this down? Tap to show. Oh, I can do chat on us. Hang on, no, I've screwed it up somehow or other. Give me a second. I'm actually going to do this one. I'm doing it because it's actually annoyed me. It annoyed me, but I'm also debating on how to respond to it. So standard kind of, for those of you on LinkedIn, and this is where it gets interesting because it's ironically now the WTF isn't just obviously email that's coming into the inbox. I have both RoboKiller and SpamKiller on the phone. They are doing a fantastic job of keeping my phone inbox down to a minimum, which is rather nice. But I'm finding more and more and more of this stuff on LinkedIn. And some of it's, there's some decent stuff in there. And there are some people who do actually read the intro, which is actually, read the freaking thing before you actually.
Mm-hmm.
There are a bunch of folks who don't. This one pissed me off in particular. And it annoyed me because, and I'm going to use the name because I'm probably actually going to use him in a post. Gentleman by the name of Tal Paparin, who is the VP of Sales as a Service, business consultant, CEO, and a founder, and all this kind of good stuff. So individuals build a company up. So knows how to build a company, great, all that kind of wonderful stuff. But they're a VP of sales, and they connected, and I'm like, oh, this would be cool. Maybe they've watched WTF that I read. Maybe they've actually read the bloody profile, all this kind of good stuff. But no, I got the inbound message going, hi, Chris, straight to the point. So it's just interesting. I actually don't mind the straight to the point thing. I'm offering my services as a fractional VP of sales, a hands-on business consultant specializing in sales. Now, let's just pause there for a second. I'm a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, for a Boom Supersonic, a large company making bloody aeroplanes. Okay? So, VP of Sales, CISO. This isn't really my realm. This isn't my area. This isn't my focus. The next sentence means that they definitely haven't read. If you're happy with your current state of your sales, there is nowhere to grow and you've got a great revenue stream, please forgive my intrusion in your mailbox. No, I'm not going to forgive the intrusion because you didn't even do the bloody research. We got from that. I actually sent them a note back and said, straight to the point back, you didn't do your research at all, did you? Got a note back from him. Nope, not at all. I just sent 3,000 of these messages, 150 per day, got a 20% reply rate and 2 booked meetings per day. Kudos in some ways.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets interesting because kudos, you got 2 booked meetings. But you know what? Out of those 150 days, you pissed off 148 people. That's how I look at it.
Yep.
You intruded on 150 people without asking. You didn't think. You didn't take a moment to go, should I maybe do some research? Will a CISO care about the VP of sales? Will a CISO actually of an aviation organization even be involved in sales? I mean, we're all involved in sales. Let's be honest. Charles was up on stage at the SAP conference last week. And actually potentially have an inbound contact from him. So we're all selling at all times, but there's a way of doing it, I would say, morally and ethically right. And spraying and praying on a public platform, to me, is not doing it right. And I think that goes to, I look at the standard of my inbox now. I look at a whole bunch of this stuff. I get, hey, quick question, or, I got another one of these. People aren't reading. And I think this is where it gets interesting is, for those of you that are followers on this one, people don't take a moment even to read the responses or even think about the responses. And because again, now I am just another number. And as another number, unfortunately, in this particular case with Danny, there's a rebellion from a lot of us going on with this one. There's a frustration going on with a lot of us on this one. I've got the 2 emails that I use, and I think I've put them up on LinkedIn a few times. And if anybody here wants them, just hit Danny or I up. Because I'll send out my dear vendor letter. I got a longer version, I got a short version, and you can tell even sometimes people don't read those because there are some people who do. We'll talk about that in a second. I don't get it. And you're right, a bunch of folks here are like, 3,000 messages, facepalm, decent numbers and all this kind of good stuff. it's frustrating because so many of us are fighting against this. Yet you see somebody who's just actively just doesn't give a shit. I'm going to piss off 148 people to get 2 people who care, and I don't know how to fight that. I don't know how to fight that efficiently.
It's first of all, kudos to this gentleman for one sole purpose only, actually being honest that he didn't do any
Yeah.
work to do research. I mean, kudos, okay, but spray and pray, yeah, I don't think so. But so let's just quickly recap that buildup, okay? You mentioned we broke it down. Let's do a quick recap of the elements of honesty up front, bluntness up front. Hi, Chris. This is what I need. Want to build it back up? Quick recap of buildup.
Yeah, I think on that one, I mean, I was just sending him a response back saying, "Hi, congratulations, you just got featured." Um, there's a way of doing it. I mean, for a lot of us in our industry, even as I think industry, irrespective of whatever industry it is, there's a way to approach the person. There's a way to actually do it efficiently and effectively. I would imagine that there's tools out there, even outside of LinkedIn, that allow you to do a little bit of profiling. That even that common sense thing, a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer. So if you're doing sales, you're going after either a certain demographic, certain profile, certain type, certain organization, certain structure. All of these, you build your little box and you go, okay, this is what I'm going after. And then you go, okay, what titles, what logic? Why would you go after a CISO? Yeah, potentially a CEO of a small to medium-sized company, but then you're going after chief marketing, chief revenue officer. You're going after maybe other VPs of sales or something like that. You don't go after the freaking CISO. That is very much a spray and pray tactic that I have no real time for.
I'm grinning because it could be because you're affiliated with WTF that
It could be, but you know what?
you're
Again,
sales pro.
here's the problem on this one. RTFM, the fucking manual, for crying out loud. It's in the first 2 sentences of my bloody profile on LinkedIn. This shit ain't hard.
Yeah.
And I think that's another one. And exactly to somebody who just put this one, it should be required, reading or whatever for business development people. I think that's why I get frustrated on this. I put it out there. I don't make any bones about it. I'm like, y'all, this is how to approach me. I've got it down there. And some people will read the first sentence and go, "Hi, I've got whiskey and tea." And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't read the second bloody sentence, did you muppet? And it's the same thing on emails. It's like, okay, there are ways of approaching. I had somebody else hit me up, and to their credit, they're hitting me up. They're former .mil, they're former British military, and they're like, "Hey, former British military, da-da-da-da-da. Now the problem is then they launched in the same email. They launched into and now I'm going to sell you something.
Yeah.
Not as blunt as that, but it wasn't far off of that. I'm like, okay, remember, this is about relationships.
Yep.
One email does not count as the first paragraph on your email going, "Hi, I was military and I did this. Now I'm going to." That is not building a relationship.
No.
That isn't doing it right. You and I have done it right. We've got Maria on here. I mean, you want to talk about doing it right. Yes, exactly.
And a lot of folks here on the call, actually in the chat, who are actually like systematically trying to do it right.
Yeah,
they've been working for months, offline with us, shooting messages, validating that kind of stuff. This is the whole point. And I don't know who mentioned about the podcast should be required trying.
Yeah, a LinkedIn user, so it'd be fun unknown who that is.
Yeah.
But
I gotta find that on
whoever you are,
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn user that said that, thank you very, very much.
Yes.
And I don't want to be an arse about it. I don't care if you read ours or you read somebody else's, but at the very, very least, you got to step out of your own shoes. And I think this is, again, I look at Tal and I'm like, this person, I look at Mr. Paperin. And I'm like, hey, you didn't take a look at this from somebody else's perspective. You didn't take the time to go, how is this going to affect the people that don't want to hear from me? Is it going to piss them off? Is it going to annoy them? Are they just going to delete it like the other 1,000 they've deleted today? Am I adding to the problem? Am I filling up another rubbish box? Why am I contributing to such a negative effect within the industry? And I think that's where I have a problem with it, is rather than continuing to do the same thing because you get 20% results, Why not take a different approach and go, hey, maybe I can do this more efficiently? Because the problem is, if this person's a VP of sales, they're telling everybody else to do the same shit, which is why we still have the same shit being done. And I think Chris Brown just hit it. I mean, that's the problem. It does actually create revenue.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think it's perfectly put. There's nothing out there to say this is going to annoy people. So this is the same as the telemarketing and everything else. It's like you make 1,000 calls, you piss off 995 people, you get 5 responses. Of those 5, you probably piss off 4 of them, and you get 1 sale. So you automate the damn thing, and eventually, hey presto, now in one day you've pissed off how many thousand people. So I think that's where I get a frustration on it, is there's no consideration for what this does to others that really just aren't interested or don't care about what you do.
There are some comments here that are really bringing me in right now. Josh Snow mentioned education is key. Chris, you mentioned opinions, points of view as well. Building great content that is of interest to your target audience. Obviously, yes, not easy to do. So my question to you, Chris, and also to the audience, I want to hear from the audience. How do you pinpoint what you want to say that's an opinion and a point of view? How do you establish those opinions in order to educate your target audience? I don't know if that question makes sense, but
It does. It absolutely does.
yeah. So,
'Cause, I
so
mean, at
how,
the end of the
like,
day,
it's not easy for folks, right? It's
no,
easy
no,
to
no,
say,
no.
it's not easy to do. It took me, God knows, my whole career until I got to a point to actually know how to say what I want to say. So
But
how do
here's
you
the
do it?
challenge. Here's the challenge on this one. You can't only fools rush in. You know, let's take a line out of a line out of music for a second. Only fools rush in. You can't do that in this industry. Not really anymore. You can go, hey, we are here. I'm here. Yeah, and so how I used to, we'd be like, hey, we're a pen testing, we're assessment, we're a consulting organization. We're here to help. If you need us, yell. Otherwise, see you at a conference.
That's one
You know,
message, though. That's
hmm?
not one message. That's not an opinion. So I'm going to push back and I'm going to say, how do you develop opinions to start educating people that you care about, right? Chris,
Oh,
you have a lot of opinions. Like, what is the kind of
empathy.
success that folks,
I think
starts
it's
with
empathy.
empathy?
I think it starts with empathy. I think it starts with knowing the effect that you have on somebody else. You and I mean, so a perfect example. I know when I first started, I guess, retaliating, for a better way of putting it, in the industry, I would name names every single time, like every single time. I'd name names, I'd name companies. The challenge on doing that is, unfortunately, other people pick up the pitchfork and the flaming torches and go after them, which is not effective either. Naming names in this case for this individual is, you already got a decent following on LinkedIn. Great. You got a decent buffer. I don't agree with how you're doing it, and I'm going to point it out. Now, he doesn't seem to care, and I'm going to assume he probably doesn't care, because his answer was, I didn't care and I didn't do any research. Great. Well, let me give you an alternative opinion. 148 people pissed off your approach. I think it starts with empathy. And I'd be interested on everybody else that's listening in on this one. I think it has to be empathy. I think it has to be from both sides. So first and foremost, this isn't, and I'm standing here as a CISO, and I'm standing here and going, I also have to have empathy. Tal's got to put food on the table. No two ways about it. We all have to put food on the table. I mean, Danny and I, for everybody who's listening, and Danny and I have had a conversation about how do we actually maybe try to monetize this WTF that we're doing to some degree, to be able to put food on the table. And I think there's a way of doing it ethically, morally, and correctly, from a societal standpoint, from a human standpoint, from a respect standpoint. And maybe there we go. We've got ethics, we have respect. And again, that's both ways. I will try to make it clear. Again, the chap that hit me up on the Royal, he was a former military, former Air Force, actually Royal Air Force. I'm like, hey, love the idea, love what you're doing. I'm not going to need it until 2024. That's the earliest I know I'm going to look at it, because of everything else that I got going on my plate. And I absolutely respect the fact he shot a note back saying, great, understood. I'll put you on the calendar for end of the year, beginning of first quarter. I'm like, brilliant. That's what I needed. I
Hmm.
didn't need I can do better for you now, and we can do a better deal for you now, and we can do this, and I'll keep sending you shit. I got exactly what I wanted, which is like, I know what my roadmap looks like. I'm happy to share enough of it so that you can make an informed decision. And between the pair of us, we now know that I'll get a reach out from him end of the year, first quarter. From my standpoint, from a business standpoint, I'm not pushing it off. I just know when I'm going to be focused on it. And I got the respect back from him going, great, I got your time. I told him what my timeline was. So I think that's another big one. From a CISO's perspective, we also need to be very, very clear with the message.
Hmm.
We also need to go, somebody hits me up and says, hey, I've got a product. I might like it. I'm like, hey, I love your product, love the idea, but this is not the right time for it because I have 5 other things that I'm working on. I've got the team working on 3 other things, and this just isn't the right time.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that more folks on the practitioner side are joining the resistance and actually trying to help, you know, folks on the vendor side grow, sales folks do things the right way. And you also mentioned in your Dear CISO post, it's not only the vendors, it's also you. So how do you think, have you seen a shift on the practitioner side with regards to helping vendors optimize the way they're doing things, fixing lots of lots of other things that are broken in the industry from the GTM side?
I've seen a couple of us. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of folks out there that I think are trying to help.
Okay.
I don't think it's enough.
Yeah.
I think that's where the challenge is. And I think part of that is we're just burned out slash frustrated slash don't have the time. Because again, showing empathy, giving feedback, trying to align somebody on the sales stuff takes time and effort. And there are times when you just don't have, there's not enough freaking hours in the day. Those 2 dear vendor letters are my get out of jail free card. They're my, I don't know, I just don't have enough fucking time to talk with
Yeah.
you. Therefore, what I'm going to do is just send you a dear vendor letter.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I had a call end of last week, or beginning of this week. It was the end of last week, and it was LinkedIn. It was an inbound reach from LinkedIn, and it was actually somebody who did it right. They did it more efficiently, and I'm like, yeah, I'll happily have a conversation with you. I'm not ready to buy, but let me help you understand where I'm at, which is what they wanted. Now, what was interesting, and this is where we get into different people approach things a different way. The original person that hit me up, she was on the call, as was another individual. The other individual was a male. And in this case, very like, I'm going to domineer the conversation. I'm going to show how this is done. He got about 30 seconds into it, and I cut him off at the fucking knees. Because I actually looked at her and said, hey, this is not what we originally talked about. I thought that you wanted to have a conversation about the industry and this and this. And you could tell there was that, like, I wouldn't say sheepish smile, but there was that kind of like smuggy, sheepish, like, I fucking told him so, but he wouldn't listen. Kind of, you could tell that was going on in the back of the brain. And he pretty much like shut up for the rest of the time because, you could tell he was like shut down on his, oh my gosh, this is my sales cycle has gone away. And the conversation with her was perfect because we talked about like the CISO, the industry, what's happening, what's not happening, and gave them insight. And we'll probably end up talking in a couple of months' time again when I'm at a point in my project life cycle where I'll actually focus on it.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you think can be done though on the C-suite side, the buyer side, practitioner side, to kind of shift a little bit in terms of joining that resistance, right? Helping folks out versus taking advantage of the vendors for the steak dinners and like what needs to happen?
yeah,
I mean, there's
I
a
mean,
lot that needs to happen, but let's break it down a little bit.
let's break it down. Okay, so perfect way of breaking it down. I have my Friday afternoons, kind of from about noon onwards, are set aside for vendor meetings.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't a huge amount of time, but it's an entire afternoon, which is a hell of a lot more, I think, than I probably actually have to give. But I try and so they're set aside for vendor meetings, and also like mentoring stuff and things along those lines. So it's a Friday afternoon thing. You're not gonna, the chances of getting hold of me Monday through Thursday. Monday's tactical, let's face it. And beginning of the week, setting it up, all this other good stuff. Tuesday is all the fallout from Monday. Wednesday is holy shit, we made it to the middle of the week. Thursday is like, what do we have to get ready for? And Friday is I can be a little bit more strategic kind of day. So Friday afternoon set aside for vendors. Those are the times I will take conversations and I will set up meetings with companies that maybe aren't on the roadmap for where I'm at now. Maybe they're intriguing. Maybe they've hit me up and they've said, "Hey, we'd love to, can we run this by you?" Or whatever the latest set of terms are for like, "Hey, I want to sell you shit. We just love some advice. We're not looking to sell you." Some of those are thinly veiled. Some of those I trust, and that's where my Friday afternoon, I think, comes from. And so for me, it's, I'll set something up on Fridays, and in the moment, I'm kind of like booking out mid June, mid end of June on those. And that's deliberate because that's my way of going, I will put time aside to change. I will put time aside to help people understand where I'm coming from. Now, whether they listen or not, I can't control that. But all I can do is put the same kind of conversation out, which is, hey, what are you doing? What's your pitch? Where are you looking? Where are you listening? What are we doing? How do we build a relationship? Is this something? Let me give it to you from my perspective. Because again, as a CISO, if I am in, what are we in now? May, almost hitting June. If I'm in June 2023, and I'm still trying to decide what my strategy is for this year, I've got bigger problems. I shouldn't be sitting in the CISO role. My strategy for June of this year was set in the middle of last year. Now, does it change and does it moderate with how my business is ebbing and flowing and where finances are and all those things? Absolutely. But strategically looking at, what am I looking at? Mobile device management. What am I looking at from a data integrity standpoint? What am I looking at from an endpoint standpoint? Got that figured out. Thank you, Maria. What am I looking at from monitoring? Got that figured out. Thank you, Maria. What am I looking at from some of these other things? There are things that in that year already have been done. There are things I'm still looking at and working on, intelligence and some other stuff. That's already been defined. So now I'll look at people. If you fall outside of that, I might turn around and say, perfect example, if you're coming in, this one of the conversations that's having was about like hardware level stuff, which I'm like, this is really cool. And I like the idea, but I don't need it until manufacturing gets started, which means I need to look at it 6 to 12 months in advance. So I'm prepped for when that starts. So now back into it. Now I want to have a conversation in 24. So as long as I'm willing to share that and I'm willing to take the time to explain that to somebody, my ask back and the empathetic kind of request back is they listen and they understand it, and maybe they change the approach from going, hey, I can solve your problems now, to, hey, I got a really freaking cool widget. I think it's cool. We think it's cool. There is the potential at some point in time in the future, you might also think it's cool. Any chance we can have a conversation?
Yeah. Love that prescriptive approach. Two things. One, I think at this point, Maria is an honorary what the fuck member at this point, because she's been mentioned the most on any podcast, I think. So shout out to Maria, who's doing very good things. She's a great example of how things should be done on the sales side. Second, I'm going to back it up a little bit from that prescriptive approach to the question is, what is the one line that you have to repeat, and I dare to say evangelize to the C-suite and to the buyer side, the practitioner side, of moving to a different way of doing things, moving to the resistance approach, which is actually the helpful approach for folks like the vendors and the sales folks on this podcast? Like, what would you have to repeat over and over again? Does that make sense?
Or the vendors?
Yeah, you and the vendors. So you, first and foremost, because people are in your network are listening to you. So if you had to evangelize that one message, C-suite, we need a change, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think that's a tough one because, I mean, on one hand, let's talk through this. So for me, the change I made from going, I mean, I'm still combative, let's face it. I mean, for crying out loud. But it was going from full on combative and pissed off and annoyed and not wanting to deal with anybody to going, hey, the only way we change is to listen. I think that's that. Hang on, I thought I'd just, give me a second. I thought I just heard a noise.
Yep, no worries. Okay. By the way, folks, if you have questions and you want to hop on live, we're facilitating that. So drop your questions in the comment. If you want to hop on, ping me and we can bring you onto the
I gotta keep an ear out. That's a tough one. I think it is, I hate to say it, it's both sides putting down the cutlasses, the weapons, the aggression, it's carve out time. I mean, the only way something changes is if you carve out time to
Yep.
actually affect change. This is what we're doing on this. This is why we do the WTF. It's cathartic. We want change. We fight for change. And if all you do is sit there and throw stones, this is why I love working at Boom. I think this is why I absolutely love working at Boom, because I spent several years throwing stones at the entire transportation industry. Aviation, obviously, is I'm infamous for. But now I'm on the inside and I can affect change.
Yep.
So you can stand outside all the day and you can throw stones,
Yep.
or you can come inside and you can try to affect change. And so I think from a C-suite messaging standpoint, you really have to basically say, hey, put the stones down, come on in. It's an invitation. It's really an invitation into change. And I think the same thing for the vendors. And there's some really interesting stuff. And I'll address something in a second. There's a whole bunch of conversations about both sides need to listen. I think before that even happens, both sides need to just come to the table. And the challenge is now figuring out who the right person or whom the right people are to speak with inside the vendor side. Business development people are listening to people like, Tal telling them they may need to send 30,000 or 3,000 messages out to make 2 meetings. 2 meetings out of 150, whatever it was. That I think is the wrong approach by far and away. But they're listening to them because they see results. But they don't see the fallout. CISOs, on the other hand, also need to take a step back and realize that everybody that is on the other end of that phone line potentially has a family, potentially has kids, friends, significant others, partners, guardians, whatever that they're responsible for, looking out for, and they got bills to pay. And they've got to put food on the table. So there's a balance. And I would rather have a very quick, hey, this isn't something I need now, but maybe it's in 24 or 25. Let's have a conversation in 6 months. I'd rather, and have the respect that gets listened to. Now, the other big one is back to our opt-in, opt-out scenario. I don't need 7,000 vendors hitting me up. This is why, unfortunately, I loved what Kalidi was trying to do. Unfortunately, that didn't succeed, which kind of sucks. In fact, it more than kind of sucks. It actually sucks.
Yeah.
I think there's a need for that in the market. I absolutely believe there's a need for that in the market. I believe there's a need for somebody to act as an advocate for companies and also vendors to some degree, like that intermediary.
Right.
Because I don't think many don't seem to be able to play well together, or this message that we're saying hasn't hit enough of those senior leaders on both sides of the fence. I have every intention. I mean, I talk about this, so we talk about this here. I talk about it when I'm on stage, but we need to put up more stuff. I mean, we need to put more things together to get the audience. You've been talking at the marketing conferences. Somebody like probably me needs to go and stand up and go, hey, living, breathing CISO here. Let me explain to you how this works from my perspective. Let me explain to you the people you're pissing off versus the better approaches. Let's talk about empathy from both sides. Let's talk about listening. Let's talk about, all of those human things.
Not a bad idea, by the way.
No, I think we need to. Honestly, I'd be up for it. I mean, if there's, I don't know. I mean, where do chief revenue and chief marketing people congregate?
Just you wait. My key phrase frequently with folks, just you wait.
Oh
my gosh. Yeah. I have some cool, funky ideas up my sleeve for the remainder of the year. So we'll.
Yeah. So John just hit a good point, which is true as well. And I just ran into this one. I'm like, so with Boom, as with any major corporation, if we're bringing on a new vendor, there's a whole process, disclosures, master service agreements, processes to go through to get you into the vendoring system. So sometimes it is easier just to go to some of the established vendors and go, hey, do you partner with these people? If so, let's just go forward with them, which is great until that process gets gated by sales or gets gated by, hey, all I want to do is get my technical questions answered. And then unfortunately, that's seen as a lead, which then you get into the Salesforce database, and then you have to go through 3 hoops before you get your ready question answer because you can't find it on the freaking website. So I think there's also that balance as well, is some of us just need to very quickly and very efficiently go, are you even something I care about or not? So I think that's where it gets interesting as well, because perfect example, let's say I'm looking for like a new endpoint. I'm not, but let's say I'm looking for a new endpoint solution. I need to very quickly understand what the market looks like for endpoint. I know the normal protagonists. I know a few of the other folks out there. Who else can help me understand the other, say, 10? How quickly can I either put them in or take them out without spending 10 Friday afternoons talking to 10 different sets of salespeople? How do I do that efficiently and effectively and without any kind of bias? And that, I think, is where it gets challenging as well, is if you look at sales, marketing, you look at everything else, where's the bias? I don't trust Gartner. I don't trust Forrester, unfortunately. There's a little too much bias, shall we say, in all sorts of those, and we can go into that for a variety of different reasons. I don't like the pay-to-play model. I don't like actually how it works on some of this. I trust people. I trust practitioners. I trust people in our industry to go, hey, I need help with these 10 different endpoint solutions. Who's heard them? That's why I love the Tinkerers group. But again, that's a fairly tight, close-knit group. How do we get that out to the masses? I have to talk to a vendor, and sometimes I'm like, hey, I'm talking to you because I just need 4 answers. I don't want to be added to your database. I don't want to be put on the opt-out. Just answer these 4 fucking questions, and at that point, then maybe we can have another conversation. But y'all got to answer this first.
Right. Beautiful. Beautifully said. We have a brave caller joining
Sweet.
us now.
Yeah, brave callers.
Justin Merhoff. I'm going to bring him in now. He has a fabulous question. Here we go. Justin.
Hi, guys. Wow, my head
Hello.
comes up really in the way on. I'm just picking up my kids from the last day of school. So, Chris and Danny, thank you for bringing me on. What I wanted to ask specifically to Chris and Danny, and you can fill in as well. So, the NCSC on Global Accessibility Awareness Day released on how important accessibility is to the field of cybersecurity. And in my brief research and only knowing about digital accessibility for 10 months, and yes, I work for an accessibility software company, I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on making sure that when you roll out programs, solutions for the end users and tooling, if a security analyst was blind, how are you currently dealing with that? And then Danny, I would love for more push from the sales as well, because if the tools are more accessible, then that can be more people to use them. And I was just curious on what your guys' thoughts were on that. This is the first government entity to recognize this, and I was just curious on what your thoughts were, Chris.
Okay, so if you're talking about Boom directly, you're probably talking to the right and wrong audience at the same time, given the fact that actually yesterday we had folks in to our location on our mock-up who were, how should we say, excessively challenged. I don't know what the official term is, so if I've offended, I don't mean to, but if they're let's face it, we had folks in who were low on sight, low on limbs, and various other things. And we had them going through the entire place going, what have we missed? So that's what we do. Now, from a tooling standpoint and a tech standpoint, not my realm, but my realm would be make it as accessible as humanly possible. And I would probably guess that 90 to 95% of systems are not, if that makes sense.
Well, also too, like your security awareness program, how are you currently ensuring, because you also talk to other CISOs, like how are we already making sure that this training is accessible? Because currently it doesn't seem like it is.
I would disagree, because we track from a metric standpoint who has not, and then we question why they haven't and what we've done differently and what we need to do differently to make it that way. Okay. Now that's us. So, I mean, I have a fiduciary duty, as do most CISOs that are beholden to companies that have any kind of regulatory and compliance stuff, to ensure that the training is put out to everybody. And everybody means everybody. And if it isn't, then that conversation has to occur. Why not? What's happened? What do we need to do to do something different? So
Awesome.
I would say that is, from a training standpoint, an accessibility training standpoint, I would say that is something that should be being dealt with fairly efficiently because regulatory and compliance says so.
I 100% agree with you. I just don't think a lot of people in our field also do that, because I just found out about this after 25 years. So, I don't think everyone is aware as you are.
Yeah, maybe that's some of it. I mean, to me, I just a person is a person is a person. I don't care. I mean, I've always said this on stage. I mean, I don't care race, color, creed, religion, limb count, what mobility, all that shit. I just don't care. You're a human. End of conversation. Let's move on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, but I think there's definitely there is validity to it. And I know from an aviation standpoint that we pay serious effing attention to it. We must, we have to, we need to, and we do for all sorts of different reasons. So I think the side is that trickles in, I think, in a lot of us on how we approach things. But again, I think it does that because we think about it. This is the whole topic that we've been talking about today is, you have to make a conscious decision to think about these things. And I think maybe that's the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with that. The other thing that's really just shocking to me that I found out is that there's people that can't even break into our industry because the tools aren't accessible. So the GRC tools, the digital forensics tools, the Nessuses, a lot of those tools are not accessible. And there's a lot of excuses of, oh, that's a back office tool. Well, what if they want to work in the back office?
Yeah, that's not, yeah, you're right. It's an excuse. It's, oops, we didn't think about it. And to redo it's going to be, yeah, that stinks. Yeah. And I think there's a validity to call out some of those organizations to go, hey, why? Right. Okay, it's like, here's the thing: you got a hall pass. Okay, you didn't think about it. You got a hall pass. Get your shit together. You've made plenty in them. I mean, especially the one company you mentioned. Y'all made plenty of money. Doesn't take that much. Get your shit together.
Right.
Yeah.
I appreciate.
And I think and I think, Chris Ross just said, or Christopher Ross, I'll be respectful. Christopher Ross just said it. Breaking into the industry, unfortunately, is hard. Whether you, no matter what barriers are in front of you, that you have to climb over, fair or foul.
I agree with that one, because there shouldn't be any. A digital forensics tool is just looking at logs, and if God of War, a video game, can be played by someone completely blind, I think that's an excuse. The tools 100% should be accessible, especially when our industry is saying, hey, we have all this talent or jobs, we need this talent. Well, you have a pool of talent, just make the tools accessible.
Yeah, no, I won't disagree. Now, the other alternative is, let's face it, there are toolings and capabilities that are layered on top of this that would also make it accessible.
Well, layering, when you do layering and overlays, that can actually bring your company to a risk. In 2019, Anonymous hit Israel and used a Java plugin to poison the DNS. Yep. So when
I'm aware of. We are getting a little off topic on this. Just a heads up. Yeah, we are squirreling a little bit, shall we say?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you for coming on. We have one more brave soul coming on. Jason wants to validate actually a message. Jason, Chris, Jason, we've met.
Hello.
Hey, Chris. Can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for letting me on. Yeah, we've met. So I love the show, as you know, early follower. I think we've established a bit of a relationship. I'm part of Danny's cohort to try to go out there and make some change. So I always talk about if we're going to do that, we can have to put ourselves out there.
Yep.
And try it out. So as you know, I did it with you over LinkedIn and wanted to see if we can talk about it, maybe help the group.
Yeah, go for it. I mean, you approached me. It's tough. There's been a bunch of folks that have approached. So, I mean, I'm intrigued. What research did you do beforehand? Let's start with the easy one.
Yeah. So I think I talked about it a little bit, but obviously I've done the research through the podcast, the research on your LinkedIn, and then I did a little bit of research for job openings that you had that were relevant for the solution set, both on the security side and on the developer side. And by the way, I have my gloves on, so I'm ready. I know you got a new barbecue, so I thought I'd come on and make sure that in your response before you reply, I'm gonna be ready for hot objects.
Yeah, unfortunately, the barbecue is a smoker, so there's no real bloody flame with the stupid thing, which is really annoying.
It's good for taking off the grill, though.
It is, yes. I do have a flamethrower though, just to quantify that if necessary. No, it's yeah, it's a tough one. I think, to Danny's point, from my side, you have to approach each conversation with a fresh set of eyes. And that's hard to do. That's hard to do because real fast you get real cynical. And I mean, I mentioned it earlier. Somebody said there are. Yeah, I think it probably needs to happen.
You want to recap the message, Jason, so that we get a little bit of context here for the audience?
Yeah.
Sure. So high level, I'm essentially helping early stage startups on the sales side. So I reached out with one of the early stage startups that I'm helping, recapped a little bit about the industry that they're in, the why and the how, and then a little bit of a recap for an intro. Again, I don't want to name company names or kind of get into some of the specifics because I don't know if it's relevant here. It's really just through the cohort and just in general trying to get better, testing the actual outreach and whether or not it was relevant. Again, I tried to do my research. I tried to make it relevant for what I thought would be potentially part of your industry. And then the real important part there, and I think this is important across the sales side, you talked about not wasting time. Really that understanding of essentially not wasting time, because we're on the same page on that. So
yeah, I think so. So here's where it gets interesting, because you never know how much is too much and how much isn't too much. So so gut take straight away when I get, so I actually have the conversation that the three of us were on right in front of me on the iPad.
Sure.
When I look at a stream of text and it fills up an entire page, it's an immediate, oh shit, I'm going to have to take more time over this. I can't make a quick decision. I speed read, but even when I'm speed reading, I still have to actually take time and go, okay, what's good, what's bad, what's ugly, what do I have to concentrate on? And so a wall of text, and yes, it was 3 paragraphs. It was nicely put together. It was nicely broken down, but it's still a wall of text. And that's an immediate like, oh shit, this is going to take more than the 30 seconds. So again, the challenge comes in because when I open up let's say I open up my LinkedIn in the morning. When I open up my LinkedIn in the morning, I've got a bunch of responses to whatever post I've done. I've got a bunch of inbound stuff. And then I typically have a wall of messages. I try, because my ADHD and my other things don't allow me to not do this. I can't have outstanding messages, even if it's only a quick response or I've read the damn thing. I can't have ones that I haven't looked at. I have to go through them all. Now, the easy ones, I can go through them quickly and go, hey, yep, got it. Yep, see it. Nope, don't do it. Yes, I like it, and whatever. When you get a wall of text, that's like, oh shit, that almost stops me in my tracks. I go, oh fuck, I'm going to have to pay attention. And unfortunately, more often than not, it gets put off to the side. Because I will pay attention, but it's when the hell I get to it, pay attention. And if I get busy or I put a post out that's very popular, or quite honestly, if life decides to actually kick me in the nuts again, which it seems to want to do this year, that stuff just gets put off to the side. And I never typically get back to it. So if you look at that one, that long one you did, so the irony of that whole thing is you sent me that long one and I didn't take the time to look to make sure Danny was already on it. I'm like, shit, you might want to hit Danny up with this stuff, because ironically we were talking about, Danny and I, as I said, have been talking about monetizing. I'm like, okay, this would be fun to bring it on. Let's see if we can do something with it. But it's a tough one because I also need to take the time to read stuff. I just saw something from
yeah, I mean, I'll tell you my thought process, and I did talk to Danny about it because we went through the who, what, why, how, and we actually talked about the length of it. Yeah, I probably made an assumption that may not have been as accurate, that you would have taken a little bit more time to read it, just in full fairness, than if it would have just been a cold outreach, or if it would have been somebody that I hadn't met and a few other things. So I tried to be a little bit more detailed, I think, than it would be, but I definitely hear you on that. Yeah,
and I think it is a balance, and it's a balance, and it's tough, and I think there are easier answers, I think sometimes referencing something back in context is a useful one. So a perfect example on this one is, as you said, met you at RSA. Now, here's the challenge on this one. RSA is a conference. I was there for whatever the hell I was there for. I think I was there for most of it, like 3 or 4 days. I met several hundred people, like actually spent time talking with several hundred people. When you say I met at RSA, now what I also have to do is take the brain out of the, hey, I'm dealing with this cycle and go, okay, can I remember? What do I do? What's the context? What I typically do with anything like that is I'll normally try to say to people, hey, we met here. I had somebody hit me up the day and they were like, hey, I was the guy wearing this. And I'm like, great. Now I know exactly where you were. I know exactly the context of the conversation. I know I can place it. Now I can remember the fucking conversation that we had. Because when you spend time at a conference or even on this stuff and you end up talking with 20 people, 30 people, 100 people, when I take a business card from somebody, I write on the back of it typically what the conversation was, whether I want an action on it, and sometimes even just something what they were wearing, so I remember the conversation. And so it's always useful saying, hey, meet you at RSA. I don't know if you remember, we briefly talked at like the W, sitting at a table on Tuesday afternoon, and you were, put a little bit of that context.
Yeah. And in fairness to kind of, I mean, then we start getting wordy, right? I think you kind of get an idea of the difficulty on our side.
100%. 100%. Yeah. But again, you could do that in 2 sentences. Hey, met you at RSA. I was the guy wearing this, or we had a brief conversation about this. Poof, done.
Yep.
And at least then it gives me a little bit more context. So that's always useful. Context is useful, again, because I think so many of us, you're in the same boat. I mean, how many people did you talk to at RSA?
A couple hundred.
Yeah, and that's it. And it's like, okay, how the hell do you keep track of them?
Yep.
And if I handed you my business card, you'd be like, tall, beard, hairy guy.
So I guess for the audience then, in all fairness, because we're working through it, is it a meeting that you're going to take? I mean, let's just go through it.
Yeah, I think it would be, because I mean, your approach was actually really nice and it was positive.
Yeah,
Two ways about it. I think that's what I loved about it. What I loved about it is there was creativity in there. There was time taken in there. It wasn't a spray and pray. And for that for me is like, hey, we're going to have a Friday afternoon conversation. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And what I was hoping and what ended up happening is we had a brief conversation on here, because I know we talked about it in this one. It's like, hey, Danny's Chris. I found it, thankfully. But
just for a little context for the audience here, Jason did a good job of just telling him what his intent was. Like, I'm not trying to sell, just want to get better. This is what I need a little bit of feedback from you. If it's open, if you're open for it, here it goes. Who we are, why we do it, and what, where, and how we can take it forward. Thoughts, happy to provide. If not, totally cool. So it was very straightforward as to what he needs, what his intent was. Super
and I liked it, and it was actually nice. Now, some stuff in there, and this is the cynic in me. This is the cynic in me. So take it as the cynic in me.
Fair.
Half of our bloody industry is former Israeli military, 8,100, 8,200.
Yeah. So 100%. That gets back to the being wordy. So my takeaway from this is, it's something that we can try. We can help to get better at it, reduce the number of words, reduce maybe some of the components that we already know. So that's a great point. We know that most of people are already Israeli military, so that we just make some assumptions there that can reduce the total amount of words.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. But I do like it. Now, the other thing, I'll be honest, and this is a very personal thing, is when it comes to just pleasure reading and escapism reading, I will read books. When it comes to work-related stuff, I read bullet points. And sorry, got it, Danny. When it comes to this stuff, I tend to read bullet points, and I actually format. If you look at my LinkedIn posts, my bullet points are formatted so they fit one bullet point, one line, and so I deliberately do that. Because don't knock us. I'm not knocking you bunch of whatevers. Fucking love you, and I've worked with you enough, and I'm not. But let's face it, everybody claims to be a commander of 82. Sorry, I'm reading some of the comments that are coming down on here. All right, Squirrels. This is the other problem. I have squirrels. This is bullet points I think for me are great on this one, but I like it. And yes, we will. Do me a big favor. So after this one, hit me up, because I'm not going to respond on this one. Let's you and I actually sit down on a Friday afternoon and just sit down and bash through some stuff. I'm happy to talk about it. I don't know if it's anything we're going to use again right now, but I know it's something that we need to get in place as some of the development stuff matures.
Cool. Jason, thank you. Appreciate you. Great job. We have time for one more before we sign off with imparting thoughts. We're bringing Ali on.
Hey, Ali.
Hi. It's Ally, actually.
Ali. Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
Ali.
Oh, you're great. That whole identity thing. Long story short, the name got given to me from traveling the country and walking with people, we'll say. Chris, we've interacted a lot. It's great to finally meet you.
Yeah, me too. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, some of the conversation stuff on LinkedIn has been, I love it, blunt, forthright, and fruitful, shall we say?
Yeah, well, autism tends to help with that a little bit, I think.
Will not, cannot, I'm not going to disagree.
I actually changed companies kind of recently, and I was curious just how you would approach thinking about a tech that basically what I can do now is tokenize biometrics for biometric MFA, things like that. And I was wondering, I was just a little curious about how a CISO might find that effective, or
first and foremost, ignoring the tech, your biggest job is going to be surfacing what you do between the 1,000 and other companies that originally tell me that they can solve my MFA problem, that they've got it all identity management, they can put it in kind of some singular system and everything else. That's going to be challenge number one, is getting through all that bloody FUD and crud and crap that's out there. Secondly, from my standpoint, we have, let's just say, we have our solution of choice in place at the moment that we bubble everything up from an identity management standpoint. And it all sits in one place, but then we also have tendrils going into others, but we have a centralized system. So if you make an assumption that some of us, thankfully, have got our hands around identity management to a point where we've got it organized, and then you take it from an organized. So if you start talking about maturity, I've got, you've got no clue, some clue, organized, kicking ass, and standing on stage talking about it. Your conversation is going to be on, hey, I'm going to make an assumption you got your shit together, otherwise you wouldn't be in your place. How do I help you take it from your shit together to making it more effective, easier, and stuff like that? Perfect example for us is we are looking at potentially changing out our surveillance systems and our badge authentication systems. So can you, by tokenizing and by doing what you can do on biometrics and everything else, help me identify where people are in the building more efficiently? Help me, when there's an incident, identify who is and who isn't in the building. As I'm walking through a manufacturing process, how do I identify where that person is, so what they're working on, what building cycle, and all this other stuff. So I think a non-traditional approach, and even maybe just making some better assumptions, like almost talking to the CISOs and going, hey, I'm assuming you got your shit together, so you've probably got most of your users and stuff under one place. How can we help you make it more efficient? How can we help you go from a 90th percentile to a 95th percentile from efficiency ratings? And offboarding is another big one. That's a huge one that scares the living crap out of most of us, which is, I fired somebody, and how do they manage to get through the process and then not still drawing a paycheck and still have access? So there's some creative stuff that you can do that gets away from the standard fucking message of, hey, you've got thousands of users and you have no fucking clue. I'm like, I kind of have got a clue, little buddy. So I would take a different approach. Your biggest thing you could probably do as well, look at the messaging that's out there from everybody. Don't use bloody acronyms. I still have to look up acronyms. Somebody comes up to me and goes, hey, I've got IAM and IBM and I did it and PK. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? So demystify it, take the complexity levels down a bit, and I would turn around and see what the messaging is out there, and you're gonna have to stand out a lot more. Talk to Danny about that.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about booking with you, Danny, sometime later this week. Whenever it pops up on your calendar, anyway.
Happily. By the way, if anyone wants to book with me or with Chris, feel free to come through me. We have the link to book on the website, audience 1ST, the number one.
There's no feel
FM.
free to book through Danny. Book through Danny. Yeah. Don't come to me directly, because all I'm going to do is go talk to Danny.
Yeah. All right, Ally, it was wonderful having you on. Thanks again.
And you as well.
Hit me up on
Great to
LinkedIn.
finally meet.
Yeah, you too. Book me on LinkedIn. All right. Take care, you.
You too.
All right, we are headed towards the end of the show. Literally 7 seconds left, but we'll go slightly over. This has been wonderful. So good to get back to this, Chris. Thank you. Really, I mean,
I appreciate. We just got called out. I said acronyms are bad, yet we're using WTF. You know what? It is what it is. Suck it up.
It's universal. Come on. I mean, and
we're
trying to keep it PG,
and then we'll probably get banned from LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly.
So, let's not do that.
Fabulous. One request for all of you on the show, we wanted to validate actually with you, because as to Chris's point earlier, we do have to put food on the table. We're looking to monetize this show, and we want to validate with you if that's a good idea for all of you. We have an actual approach that we want to take to systematically improve outreach, systematically improve relationship building. So Chris and I were thinking of sponsoring the show. Any vendors or sales folks who want to sponsor the show, we will work solely with you on the show and then give you inputs, outputs, an actual report of what could be done based on what's needed for folks like Chris, so you can go back and optimize. Yes.
Can I bring a flamethrower?
Yes.
Yes. But then I guess I have to extinguish them, put them out, and make them nice and whole again, don't I?
Yeah.
All right.
So we do want to know what you think about that. We do want to make this actually, while it's very useful for everybody, we know that we've gotten the input. We want to make this systematic. We want to make this a methodology. We want to get you those report cards so that you can optimize. So let me know. Yeah.
I think the fun part to add on to this is somebody who comes from the intelligence side of the world. I'll go wander on your website. I'll go look and see who's out there talking about you. We'll go hit LinkedIn. We'll go do stuff like that and go, hey, here's where the message resonates. And here's where the message is either A, confusing, B, confusing, C, sucks, D is the same as everybody else's, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's the other part of it as well, because that brings the context in for the show. It's like, hey, let's have this conversation. How are you doing it? What are you doing it? What are you doing right? What's resonating? What isn't resonating? And then as an overall message, like with Ally, we just talked about it. It's like, hey, there's so many out there. How are you differentiating without adding new acronyms, talking bullshit in the system, telling everybody you're wonderful and you can solve all the problems, because those are not ways to do it that will make anybody happy. So this isn't just a like, hey, let's just do a bit of show stuff. There's actually a bunch of shit that'll happen behind the scenes.
100%. I had a train of thought and I totally lost it, but
sorry.
No, it's good. I'll figure it out. Such is life. I always lose my train of thought on a regular basis. Stand in the kitchen. Okay, wait, what am I doing with life? So let me know if that resonates with any of you, if you're interested. We do want to improve. We have folks who are ready to help, ready to take a look and dig in deep and give you the output needed to optimize. So this has been wonderful. Chris, any imparting thoughts to the audience today before we sign off?
I think the big one, empathy. In this system we've talked about, yes, are we chewing into vendors? Absolutely. Do we need to chew into CISOs more? Absolutely. And not just CISOs, leaders in our industry. There's so much take and not enough give.
Yeah.
So my request for everybody this week, before you chew back on a CISO or on a vendor, take a step back, put their shoes on, and then go forward.
100%. Echoing that, and I will say, we are on every week now. We are going back to the every week cadence, not just every other week. So be ready for next week. Look out for a post from me for the event. Yeah, for the event. Mr. Chris, got to put your post out.
No.
All right. Thank you, everybody. It was wonderful being back. We are well over time. This has been another episode of What the Fuck Did I Just Read? Tech Sales and Marketing Edition. Got to get used to saying that again.
I love it. I love it. I'm the willing cohort. I'm still the willing cohort. I'm having fun. So I'm loving it. Thanks, everybody. I better jump on to the next meeting.